In the wake of Luka's move to LA, the Golden State Warriors are getting desperate for a star to pair with Steph Curry, and it may involve a familiar face. Plus, speaking of that deal, I have lingering questions to ask Matt and Haize on that swap, like why are people within the Mavs orbit breaking down the door to insult Luka Doncic? Don't look now, but while you were on the trade machine, the Trailblazers got good. What else have we missed? That's all today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free. We are available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app and head to FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. And boy, we got a lot to get to, so we're going to get right into it. With me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior writer for the Action Network. We've got Matt Moore, and from the Locked On Bulls podcast, we have Haize. Matt Haize, we're going to start with the Golden State Warriors, who, according to multiple reports, are lighting up the phones looking for a star to pair with Steph Curry. Here's Locked On Warriors on a dream pairing that was first raised by the Steinlein's Jake Fisher.
Suns are listening to offers on Kevin Durant. Durant is aware of this. Golden State has been the most active in the pursuit of Durant, with Phoenix holding interest in Kuminga. Okay? Golden State's ideal plan: bringing both LeBron and Durant to the Bay Area to play alongside Curry. Close to $150 million from three players. And then, Draymond would have to be gone. Wiggins would obviously be gone.
For the next however many years LeBron decides to keep playing, you're putting the three best players of an era on the floor together every night. That's spectacular.
LeBron, KD, and Curry. Now, before the Luka trade, I would have said all of that is nuts and clickbait and so on and so forth. But after that trade, I'm not sure what to believe anymore. What's going on with Golden State? What happened to the Warriors not mortgaging the future for the now, Matt?
I mean, I think it's hard to do that when you keep losing. You can keep saying that, but you keep losing. You know, we came on the show and it was like Draymond being like, we don't want to do anything rash. We want to build this franchise for the future. And I was like, who's we, Draymond? Because you don't have the power to trade people, unlike some people. Here's my understanding of it. The Beal situation has been so frustrating for everyone in that Bradley has the no trade clause in Phoenix, and Kevin Durant wants Jimmy Butler. And so now it's this weird thing of like, look, if you can get Jimmy, then we can make this work and we can try again with Phoenix. But if not, yeah, maybe. Maybe. And again, there's people that speak for KD that I'm not sure are in line with him, because we've seen this a couple of times where it's like consistently, yeah, KD wants out, and then he's like, nope, that's not what I want, and then be like, yeah, no, he wants out. Nope, not what he wants. So I'll wait to see what happens here. I don't know how they make this money work. For the Warriors, honestly, like, sure, do it, go for it. Feels a little Hakeem Barkley Drexler to me with the Rockets. Feels a little bit much like this is kind of aged out with where these three guys are in their careers. But look, imagine the ticket sales. Imagine all this stuff. Imagine the ratings, Haize. We're all worried about the ratings. And now we got Luka in LA and KD and LeBron with the Warriors. That's got to fix it, Haize. That's got to fix all the NBA's problems.
I mean, that is one of my conspiracy theories. It's just funny how a lot of the major markets are starting to get players now again, but we'll see what that does for the ratings. But KD going back to the Golden State Warriors would be like, at this point, like, yeah, let it happen. Send Jimmy back to Philly as well. Let's just have reunions all over the place to end this NBA season. Like, I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know how they're going to get it done. Not to say that I wouldn't mind seeing it, but I think you have to ask yourself, how much of your future are you mortgaging to make that happen? If that's something, if they really, really are just adamant about finding a star to try to go for some championship run now while Steph, cool. But I think ultimately, like, this is going to end up with them trying to find one in the offseason. I'm starting to think that the Golden State Warriors are just not going to find a trade partner no matter how aggressive they want to be here leading into the trade deadline. I also think this points towards, now that the Luka trade has happened, it's added validity to every crazy trade idea that anybody can draw up, because now it's the wild, wild west. Anything's possible.
Well, did they wait too long, I guess, is the question for the Warriors, because they did spend that time saying, no, everything's fine. Everything's fine. We're going to figure this thing out. There was a good discussion on Locked On Warriors about should they have gone harder after Zach LaVine and then called it a deadline at that point. What do you think about that, Haize?
Yeah, I mean, apparently all we needed was one first-round pick back to get it, and we gave up a second in the deal as well. So, I mean, they should have probably gone a little bit harder. It seems like the Bulls were just adamant about getting something done, that they maybe have a timeline or a date in mind where they felt like they needed to make a move, and that's probably why they didn't want to wait around on the Warriors' offer. But I could see the Warriors putting together a much, much better offer than what they ended up getting in that 3-team trade. So, yeah, they probably should have went harder after LaVine.
I mean, look, here's the thing. We heard trade rumors all consistently throughout them being like, no, we got to be patient. We're not going to do anything. Like, again, it was Draymond saying that, and not, and like Steph being like, I believe in this team, and Kirby being like, we're almost there. And then consistently you heard trade rumors. They've been in the Jimmy talks for months, man. Months. They talked to everybody. They're so desperate. They've talked about Nikola Vucevic. That's a very real thing that could happen. So, look, Golden State's doing due diligence, looking around the league to see how they can get better. The underwriting current here, though, to me is, what if the Warriors are just going to realize, like, oh, we're not going to be good after Steph's gone. Like, these guys are not good enough to make us contend. We can't hang in the playoff race with Kuminga and Pods. That changes the equation a little bit. That is something I wonder if that's happening.
All right, another name mentioned in the Warriors telethon was Paul George, but Keith Pompey of Locked On 76ers is skeptical that any kind of move for Paul George makes sense for Philadelphia or any of the teams involved.
Morey is trying to win a trade, right? When you look at Paul George, who is averaging 17.1 points, which is his fourth lowest of his, 16-year career, and then he's shooting 36.5% on threes. Teams are going to say, what you mean give you quality players for him? We're doing you a favor. We're taking him off the books. If you can move Joel Embiid, then think about it. But I don't think that Paul George is going to garner the stuff that a lot of people think at this particular time. And I feel like the Sixers' best opportunity is try to see this thing through before at least this season, before you decide what you want to do with Paul George.
So a lot of interesting stuff there. Make sure to check out the full episode of Locked On 76ers if you're interested. And I as soon as Embiid's name came up and Keith's take there, I saw Haize cock his head a little bit like, what do you think about all of that, Haize?
I mean, because this is a pre-Luka Doncic trade world. Now anything's possible, right? Like, if you would have asked me that 3 days ago, I'd probably be like, there's no way that they trade Joel Embiid. But I think for much the same reasons, at least, that were talked around, like Luka's conditioning and things like that, like, you can make those same conversations about Joel Embiid and his health. And I think if the 76ers reach to a point to where they feel confident, you got two young players in Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey there that you can start trying to build something different around if you do want to move on from Joel Embiid. So I don't know. That's definitely not going to happen at this trade deadline, but I definitely think it's something that the Philadelphia 76ers could revisit here in the offseason.
Look, if Daryl Morey seeing that Luka deal, he's going to swing for the fences. Like, he just is. And I will say that this is kind of part of it, is that there is a level of not arrogance, just audaciousness with NBA GMs, where 90% of the time they're as not cowardly, conservative. Let's be kind today. They're conservative and cautious, not cowardly. And then that 10% of the time they're like, hey, what if we traded Embiid for LeBron? Like, they get very wild. And one of the reasons you do that is because if you don't, if you do that, then you can wind up like Rob Pelinka. The answer, though, is like, you can't do that unless you're the Lakers. The Lakers are the only team to get those kind of guys. Look, I think there's a lot of things that are on the table here. PG going to Golden State, The big thing here, honestly, to me, is less about the basketball side of it, the production side of it with PG, and it's more about the locker room stuff. Tyrese Maxey's their leader. That's their best player. No question. Like, that's their guy now. He's the guy that's around. He's the guy that plays every night. He's the guy who's leading them. PG, we saw this in with the Clippers, like in the bubble when they collapsed versus the Nuggets. When things are not going well, a lot of the guys roll their eyes at PG. And I'm a PG guy, but that's just like kind of true. And so I think that might be some of the dynamic is like, we need better team leadership. And Jimmy is the kind of guy that you would prefer over PG because you'd rather have toxic aggressiveness than PG's very kind of pleasant positivity.
So do you think they would be better off just seeing out this current roster construction, hoping that Paul George plays better in the back half and then address all of this in the next offseason? Would that be better for them? Even if whatever you think Daryl Morey is going to do you think that would be better for them?
No, I think they should honestly try and make some sort of aggressive move here. I mean, honestly, like I think they should get outside the box and try and find something that's really outside the box to try and do to reshape the franchise. Like, again, not to compare it to the Luka situation, but you want, if you can find some sort of structure, the biggest thing I think that you should be doing is give Sixers fans some hope here. Get like a group of guys that you're like, oh, this is like a really good component of young players. And the other thing I do think is that Daryl, I kind of feel like is still operating under pre-2024 CBA conditions where you can have 3 stars. You can't do that. You'd be better off trading PG for like 3 guys that the fans are excited about and that can help Tyrese Maxey than you would be for trying to just swap out PG for another compromised star.
All right, let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. Coming up on Locked On NBA, I've got some leftover questions on this Luka AD swap, and we'll hear from Locked On Lakers. Plus, some things are happening in the NBA while everyone is working the trade machines hard, including the Portland Trail Blazers. I think they're good now. It's crazy. We're going to hear from Locked On Blazers as well coming up. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are some of your relationship green flags? We often hear about the red flags that we should avoid, but what if we focused more on identifying the positive signs in our relationship, those green flags? If you're not sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify them, actively practice them, and even embody that green flag energy yourself. Whether you're dating, married, building a friendship, or just working on yourself, therapy can help you form relationships that love you back. Therapy helps you develop healthy boundaries and improves your communication skills. It empowers you to set clear expectations and express your needs in relationships. Therapy provides tools for managing conflict in ways that strengthen your connections rather than break them down. BetterHelp makes it easy by offering online therapy with over 30,000 licensed therapists to choose from. And if you need to switch therapist, you can do so at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free and daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com, subscribe, stay up to date with local expert analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shear, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. We've talked a lot about the deal that sent Luka to LA and Anthony Davis to Dallas, but I have some lingering questions about some of the mechanics, including how in or out of the loop LeBron James and Rich Paul were on the deal and what that means for the Lakers' future. Let's hear from our Lakers insiders, the Kamenetsky brothers, on Locked On Lakers.
Often been seen like the Lakers as an organization are afraid of LeBron, afraid of Rich Paul, afraid to ruffle those feathers. And by extension of this trade happening with those guys not in the loop, it can be seen as some as either disrespecting LeBron and Rich Paul and Clutch or confrontational towards them, or at the very least, it is signaling that LeBron is no longer priority number one in the organization. That is accurate. Mm-hmm. Priority number one from the minute this deal was even being discussed and seriously worked out, much less agreed upon sending to the league offices. Luka's the number one priority moving forward. But here's the thing. LeBron has been saying for a while, and Rich Paul has been saying for a while, that priority number one should actually be Anthony Davis, not LeBron James moving forward. If that made sense for Anthony Davis, it makes even more sense for Luka Doncic.
Okay, Haize, do you buy that LeBron and company are hunky-dory with this whole arrangement and how everything went down, or is this a signal that the Lakers and LeBron James are heading for a split sooner than expected?
I lean towards that it probably means that a split's happening sooner than they expect. Not to say that LeBron doesn't stick around for maybe another season after this, but I do think a split is coming. I just think that it's easier if you're going to try to build something around Luka that can be a contender or whatever else. It's kind of easier if Luka is your main ball handler and doesn't have to split that with LeBron. Now, maybe him and LeBron can figure it out. Sometimes great talent just figures it out regardless of how many balls are out there on the court. They figure it out, and maybe that's what they're hoping for. But I think in bringing in a 25-year-old guy who's a perennial MVP candidate, you have to kind of build around that guy going forward. And this thing's here. We've already hearing that Luka may not even sign an extension with the Lakers, so they have to make sure that they create an environment that Luka's going to want to stay. And to do that, you got to build around Luka, in my opinion.
He's gonna stay. No megastar turns down being the biggest name on the Lakers ever. Nobody turns that down. It's too good of a life. I think there are mechanics here. I think part of what may have happened is just like Clutch made a lot of noise and tried to bully the Lakers, and the Lakers, to their credit, stood up to them. After the Russ thing, they didn't mortgage their future. They hung in there. They pulled this off. If Anthony Davis had not wanted to leave, had been like, under no circumstances do I ever want to leave LA, this is probably worse. But it seems like AD is like, yeah, okay, this works. I can win here. I like Nico. This is okay. And that makes it a little bit easier. Mac 10, Dave McMenamin reported yesterday that basically like LeBron's like, he might sign extensions further here. He might stay even longer, which made me think of the tweet about, thank God LeBron's only 50. This effery can't go on much longer is what I expect the future to say about that. I think the reality is just Rich Paul doesn't want to leave LA. LeBron doesn't want to leave LA. Savannah, his wife, doesn't want to leave LA. Like, no, nobody wants to leave LA. Nobody wants to leave LA. And so that to me is like the end of this conversation.
I've been there a few times. Seems like a nice place. I don't know that I necessarily blame them. Also, I have a drop specifically for when Haize insults the LA Clippers. I don't have a drop for when Matt Moore gives the Lakers credit, but maybe I should, because that shocked me a little bit.
It's a lot of effort for something you're only going to use 4 times in the show's history.
I do have another question, and this one really involves the Dallas side of this. Well, why do we keep getting leak after leak about Doncic's fitness and work ethic? Pair that with Nico Harrison's own words about wanting a culture reset. It just seems a little unfair at this point, and I wonder, is it going to hurt the Mavs' ability to make deals or retain talent in the future, Matt?
Okay, so I talked to people yesterday that told me that Dallas staffers were complaining openly about Luka Doncic months ago. Mm-hmm. Before this trade talk ever happened, there was no idea of him being traded. That 2 different people were like, yeah, when we were in Dallas, everyone was complaining about him. Everybody in the organization that we talked to was expressing frustration with him. Okay. I don't think you're actually hearing a lot of that now, because I think a lot of it now is like people within the organization are trying to distance themselves from Nico Harrison and being like, I didn't say we should trade him. Like, that was his deal. That was not my deal, because they understand how much has upset the fans. But I am going to be curious, Haize, because it does not seem I was a little caught off guard. Look, they shouldn't have traded him. I'm never going to change my mind on that they shouldn't have traded him. Okay, not never, but I'm more than likely never going to come out unless something really dramatic comes out. I would never say they should trade him. They lost this deal. You can't trade him for this if you're going to trade him. But I did get the sense a little bit that this was maybe a lot worse than just like, yeah, no, he doesn't do enough on the conditioning side. It seems like he was a lot worse to deal with in Dallas than maybe we thought going in. That'll all change now that he's a Laker magically, but that's where I'm at on this.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think that something had to go on. Like, don't get me wrong, Nico Harrison is still a very special person, but I think that in the way that he went about it. But I mean, if you got something that to where people all throughout your franchise are complaining about Luka, it may add validity to why you felt like you had to move. I think at this point, I've gotten to this. It's not that they moved Luka. It's how they moved Luka to me. Like, it still doesn't make any sense that you only talk to the Lakers, that you don't create a bidding war, that you don't wait to try to get more assets or whatever else it is. It's the way that it went down for me. I can get over. It'd still be shocking that Luka was traded, make no mistake about it. But just the way that it went down and the suddenness of it all, and then you didn't, like, most GMs would have made a huge offer for Luka. That's the most confusing part about this still, all to me, even with everything that's come out after the fact.
It's just he put up insane numbers, helped drag them to a finals, and if you had issues with him, fine, but like, why? It doesn't make any sense to me to do that now, other than to cover yourself at that point. It's almost an admission that you shouldn't have done it.
But that's kind of my point. Is like, the conversations I had were from months ago. So like, this was like a prior thing that existed. They're not like now just trying to justify it. It's like, this was a pre-existing thing. But I think everyone's reaction is like, that doesn't mean we should trade him.
Right. They got some of those staffers getting what they asked for, but regretting it immediately. Okay, coming up on the Locked On NBA podcast, we're going to go rapid fire on a number of different stories around the deadline, including the Nuggets. Head coach Mike Malone says no to one particular trade. I'll ask Matt Moore if that's like a hard no or like a kind of a soft no. And plus, the Portland Trailblazers, they're suddenly good. They've won 8 out of their last 9 games. Should they be buyers or sellers at the deadline? That's all ahead on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. And maybe if it's not the Super Bowl, you can already get some odds on All-Star Weekend. I was checking this out on FanDuel.com. The Mac McClung right now, the heavy favorite to win the slam dunk contest. They've even got odds on the winning team from All-Star Weekend. Right now, the favorite is Team Kenny. I guess that's just based on how he is on the show and what he says, because the teams have not been officially selected yet, but you can get your bet in right now if you want to. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. I want to get to some storylines around the deadline, and we're running a little bit short on time, so we're going to go rapid fire here around the league. Let's start in Denver. Nuggets head coach Mike Malone asked if he had spoken to anyone with the team or Michael Porter Jr. about rumors that he was being included in trade talks, and he said, quote, "No, because we're not trading Michael Porter, so I'm not touching base with anybody on that. Michael is a really important piece. He helped us win a championship." Does that settle that, Matt?
You asked if it was a hard no or a soft no. It's like a caramel chewy no. There's like a little bit of resistance there, but you can eventually get through it if you needed to. If someone comes through with a great offer, then yeah. But I think most of the conversations have kind of fallen apart. My understanding is that the Nuggets are largely focused on trying to use swaps to increase their number of assets going forward into the summer. It does not sound to me like the Nuggets at this point have anything really cooking that would be a substantial deal, and any substantial deal involves Michael Porter Jr.
Okay, if they don't do a deal, Haize, what's the ceiling for Denver in your estimation in the West?
I mean, they still got Jokic. As long as they have Jokic, I think they always have a chance to make it out the West just because they do have Jokic. Now, they can increase those chances by making moves, but I'm always still going to give them a chance, at least even small one, to make it out the West.
All right, from The Athletic, 2 league sources said the Washington Wizards and Milwaukee Bucks have explored a potential deal in which Milwaukee would send Chris Middleton and draft capital to Washington in exchange for Kyle Kuzma. Deal or no deal, Haize? What do you think?
Deal. Anything to get Chris Middleton out of that team, I'm dealing. I think Kuzma's a good player. I think that if you can get Kyle Kuzma on that team in that environment, playing off those stars, I think Kyle Kuzma can be a better net positive for you than Chris Middleton at this point in his career.
No deal. There are guys that came up in these kind of bad situations that are thankful for the first time to play winning basketball. Then there are guys that play winning basketball, went to these situations, and their game kind of deteriorated as a result of being around the losing. I worry Kuzma is that. I would hold on and try and move Middleton somewhere else for a broader and bigger deal for the Bucks.
All right, also from The Athletic, the Wolves have had enough good moments over a large sample size of games to discourage team leaders from being outright sellers, is the report, but their status as a second apron team and lack of significant ammunition prevents them from being big buyers too. Matt, are the Wolves in some kind of like severed floor, like in Severance? Are they in some kind of hell out of which there is no escape?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a little bit. I think one of the problems is that Tim Connelly notoriously does not make aggressive trades in terms of timing. He waits and waits and waits and waits, which is why the Gobert trade was surprising and the Cat trade was surprising. I do kind of feel like there's still a very good chance that Julius Randle or Jaden McDaniels are somewhere else at the deadline. Those are 2 players that I think still will have some value on the market. If they can get off of those guys, I think they will. Not just because of the on-court stuff. I think that there's locker room frustration as well.
Haize.
Yeah, I think there's a deal to be made there. I think you still, if you can find a deal that makes sense for you, want to move off of one of those guys. I agree with the 2 guys that Matt Moore pointed out. Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels, one of those guys has to go.
Okay, finally, the Hornets and the Thunder made an actual trade last night. The Thunder will send a 2029 Phoenix second rounder to Charlotte, and Charlotte will send a 2030 Denver second rounder back to Oklahoma City. Matt is doing the windy fingers. I'll get to that in a second. But first, Haize, do you think Sam Presti gives out future seconds to special guests like corporate bosses hand out logo emblazoned USB drives?
Yeah, apparently to everybody but the Chicago Bulls who traded Alex Caruso there. Everybody else gets a second.
Matt, what was with the windy fingers?
This is just like a very curious move. This is usually the type of move that precipitates something else. So whether Charlotte's making a move or OKC's doing something, that to me is something like they both made different adjustments. If somebody had talked to them and been like, oh, if you can get this type, we want this type of first, or we want this type of second, we want this value of a second rounder, we want to fade this team and not that team. Just very curious that the OKC would do this kind of a maneuver. I don't think that this was just housekeeping. I think there's probably something else going on, whether it's by Charlotte or OKC.
I'm sure that Rylan Stiles talked about it on Locked on Thunder, although he has a lot of great things to talk about, so maybe it got buried in his show. The Locked on Hornets, we don't have a lot of great things to talk about, so we actually made this the A block. So if you're interested in our speculation on why this move happened, then check that out on Locked on Hornets. All right, final thing here on Locked on NBA. Obviously, the trade deadline sucking up all of the oxygen in the room, particularly because, like my toddler, I thought it was going to be quiet, but instead it has been screaming in our face for days. Basketball is still being played, and so in that spirit, let's do a segment called While You Were Trade Machining. While you were trade machining, the Portland Trail Blazers have won 8 of their last 9 games. Here's Locked on Blazers host Mike Richman for more on that and how it could potentially affect what they do at the deadline.
In their last 10, and their losses are to Houston and Oklahoma City. Every time they've played a team that's not very good, they've beat them. They've been blowing teams out. I mentioned that their point differential was over 12 in their 8 games prior to this, and that includes a loss to OKC. If you just look at the wins, they've been beating teams by an average of 15 points, over 15 points. Like, they've been smoking teams. DeAndre Ayton's playing really well. They're going to roll with him while he's playing really well. This is his best stretch probably as a member of the Blazers. I know he played well at the end of last season, but it's a very different context than what he's playing in right now. I'd be surprised if any Simons, Grant, or DeAndre Ayton get traded at the trade deadline, quite frankly. But what I am curious about is, does this week inform how actively they try to move those gentlemen?
Well, does it, Matt? Should Portland buy, or should they go with a full-scale fire sale at the deadline?
For the youngsters out there in the 80s and 90s, when you played a video game, a driving game, you could get into such a collision that you'd spin all the way around and be going the other way. A big sign would flash and go, wrong way. That's the Blazers. You're going the wrong way. Turn around and tank. What are you doing? There's no future here. Anthony Simons is not a franchise player. DeAndre Ayton is not a bedrock of your team. What are you doing? And their resistance to not trade guys has frustrated everybody around the league. What are you doing, Robert Williams? What are you doing with Ayton? Why aren't you moving Simons? There's zero sense to be made of this. You are winning too much. Pay attention to what the Nets did, which is they won for a little while, raised the value, and then got out and traded everybody and went the right direction. Portland has got to get this straightened out right now. It sucks that losing is better. I'm sorry, but look at where your franchise has been for the last 3 seasons. You're going the wrong way. Pull the plug, man.
Hey,
but Matt, now they're only 5 games out of the 10th seed. What do you mean? They're right there. No, I'm just playing. They got to trade everyone. If they don't use this to trade everybody on their roster and get it done, like, this makes no sense. I get it. Like, winning's fun. It's fun for your fan base, everything. I'm glad that Locked On Blazers has a lot to talk about right now instead of just wondering who they're going to trade. But you have to pull the trigger on a lot of trades between now. You got 2 days. Get it done. Get it done.
Speaking of pulling the trigger, going the wrong way in racing games, typically not a good time unless it was NASCAR 95 and you turned on paintball mode. Then you just unleashed absolute hell on the other cars. Yeah, try it. Go find some kind of way to get it digitally and try that. And maybe that's what the Trailblazers should do. They should just unleash all of their players like paintballs on the rest of the league. Let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. Thank you to Matt. Thank you to Haize for sharing their expertise. Enjoy tonight's action. Be kind to each other. And we are going to see you right back here on Wednesday's edition of Locked On NBA.